Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat to all our Torah readers and all those who came out for Aliyah, and to our Gabayim, and to Dan. So, we have reached a hinge point in the year. Truly, the Shabbat is a turning point. In our secular calendar, we begin a new month today, the month of July. School is out for the summer. People are on vacation. Even your rabbi is on vacation. Although he's doing very holy and worthy things on vacation, like the Ride for the Living and attending his mother's bat mitzvah, Mazel Tov. Wow. In our solar calendar, we've just passed one of the main events of the year, namely the summer solstice. So we've reached that turning point already. And in our Jewish calendar, we know that this week a big shift happens, right? Because until this week, we have been in the 40 days following Shavuot, which is still part of the peak experience of Shavuot. The tradition says that actually Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights receiving the Torah. But then when he came down the mountain, what happened? Carrying the tablets of stone. He saw something that was very upsetting to him, namely people were worshipping an idol. And he threw the tablets to the ground, shattering them. And this, according to the calculation, happened on the 17th day of the month of Tammuz, right? Which is 40 days after Shavuot. It's the 17th of Tammuz. This is also the day that we commemorate the beginning of the siege of Jerusalem, the breach of the walls of Jerusalem, the beginning of the period of the 3 weeks, which are the darkest, most tragic point of our annual cycle. So that's happening this Thursday. The 17th of Tammuz will be this Thursday. And at that point, we really begin to experience a shift of the energy, and particularly really for anyone involved in the Jewish year, but especially if you're a Jewish professional, you're like, oh my God, we're at the 3 weeks. That means we're almost at Rosh Hashanah. It really is. You know that we're on the train towards the high holy days once we begin, when we reach the 3 weeks. In the Torah, and by the way, there is a good, solid Hasidic tradition that actually every Shabbat not only is the collection point of the week that is just concluding, but also contains within it the seeds of the week that's coming. So as we're here on the Shabbat, really we are at this turning. We're collecting all of this blessing that we've been in the entire period from Pesach through to now, and also holding within us this looking forward to what's about to happen, what's coming. In the Torah, we also have some pretty major transition going on, as we saw in our Parshiot. We begin this week's Parshat Chukat, with the red heifer, this mysterious ritual for purification following contact with human death. And then after that, we hear of the deaths of Miriam and then of her brother Aaron. And then the children of Israel are really coming close to the borders of the land. They're getting right up there, but as they're edging closer to the land of Israel, various other challenges need to first be surpassed. But one of the major themes, as we saw, one of the themes is water, which I'm going to come back to. Another of the themes is really death. Like that, really, this is the ending of something. This is the end of the entire generation of the Midbar has now passed. The old is dying away, and they're beginning to look forward into an uncertain future. And through all of these transitions, as I mentioned before, as I encouraged you to investigate in your reading of the Parsha, as we heard the Torah being read, we have this profound anxiety about water, which is unsurprising. Water is our most precious resource, and of course for a desert-dwelling people, even more so. But we ourselves are desert-dwelling people. We're in high desert right here. And Rabbi Joel Hammer, and I don't know if anyone here knows this wonderful book, the Jewish Book of Days. If you're someone who likes to study a little piece of Torah every day, I highly recommend this book for each day of the year. It's a one page where she brings a midrash, a piece of scripture and a midrash, and then gives a little teaching about the character of the day. She has a wonderful way of dividing. She starts in the introduction by looking at various midrashim about the structure of the year, and I'll leave this on the stender so you can have a look. This is a wonderful diagram of how all the different cycles of the year go together. And she maps the year into eight portions, which she maps onto the tree, saying that it is a tree of life to those who hold fast to it. And so each season of the year, root, branch, leaf, bud, fruit, and so on. I won't tell you her whole, highly recommend, I can't do it justice to summarize it, but do read the introduction. But what she says about this season that we're in right now is she actually calls it the season of water within fire, right? She says the south is the direction of blessing, as we learn from Numbers Rabbah, from Midbar Rabbah, and summer's harvest is a blessing for the world. For those of us in colder climates, such as the one I'm from, the summer weather is especially precious, giving us a sense of play and freedom. Outwardly, this is a season of fire, when cities and crops are scourged by heat. Yet inwardly, this is the water season, time when fruits begin to fill with juice. Water is our role model, calling us to cry out our grief and quench one another's thirst for comfort. Summer teaches us love of life and pity for the falling flower. We pour out our hearts before the divine presence, so that we may prepare ourselves for the rebirth that will come in autumn. So we in this place here have had this wonderfully wet, rainy spring and early summer, and we see everywhere around us the bounty that comes from that, and the sense of ease and sustenance, where the creeks full and trees so green, and anyone who's been hiking recently will have seen the meadows filled with wildflowers, and all of this is the gift of our precious water. But we also know, if we've been in Colorado for a summer before, that before very long, in all likelihood, things will begin to dry out, and by the time we come to the high holy days, our green will have mostly become yellow and brown, and the heat will begin to, the fire will begin to overtake the water. We know that this is dangerous, right? We need the sun. Obviously, the sun is our great battery that charges our entire ecosystem. However, it needs to be tempered by water, or it does become damaging to the earth and damaging to our health. And we know very well the dangers of fires, wildfires, which, God protect us, have been already at this season sweeping over parts of this continent amongst other continents, and we in these parts know that we are very far from being immune to these dangers. So we know that always the beauty of the sun needs to be tempered by the beauty of the rain and the waters that we are blessed with here. As we drew out from when we were reading the Torah, Miriam and her well and the story of the hitting of the rock are just some of the reflections of these concerns about water. In Parashat Balak, which we didn't read in full yet, we also see the very same things. In fact, the beginning of the story of Balak, who is the king who hires the prophet Bilam, is that he says that he sees the people approaching, and he says, they're going to lick up all of the green of our country like an ox eats up the field. It's the same thing. It's the same concern. There are too many people. The water of this arid region cannot sustain this visiting population, and that's why he hires this prophet to try to curse the people, although of course in the end Bilam, who only says what God tells him to, because he's a true prophet, blesses the people not once, not twice, but 3 times. And the final, his peak blessing is as follows. Haufet matovu halacha Yaakov, right, we know that part. How goodly are your tents, Jacob, your dwellings, Israel. Listen to this. Like palm groves that stretch out, like gardens beside a river, like aloes planted by the Lord, like cedars beside the water. Are you picking up the theme here? Their boughs drip with moisture, their roots have abundant water. Then they shall, devour their enemies, and they'll come out on top. It's all about the juicy sustenance that we as a people are said to be blessed with. Now, water obviously is like the very stuff of life, mayim, chayim. We can't live without it. We can actually survive without food a great deal longer. We can survive without food for weeks. We can survive without water only for days, maybe even hours. We're deeply people, human beings, we're deeply people of the water. And in our tradition, we also see water as symbolic, as well as obviously being, literally incredibly important. So I want to ask this question to you all. What are some of the things of which water is a symbol? Not rhetorical. Yes? Transition, say more.
So if you're going from one mode to another, if you're getting ready to have dinner, you might wash your hands, or even I know if I have a hard day, if I take a shower, I feel way better. So just transition.
Beautiful. Okay, so we use water and we use it ritually also to pass between states as we use the mikveh. One thing I thought you were implying there, also water is a symbol of transition because it moves. We think about the water cycle, it moves from the sea, back up to the sky, back down to the earth in the form of rain or snow, then it goes back into the rivers and goes back to the sea. So it is inherently transitional. It's the only thing that we find in our ecosystem, someone will correct me if I'm wrong, that actually occurs naturally in a solid, liquid and gaseous state. Very, very special for that reason.
Cleansing.
It's cleansing, right? Yeah.
Temperament.
Say more?
Well, in Chinese medicine, there's a water element. In Ayurveda from India, there is. And now I forgot the tribe, but one of the 12 kids of Yaakov was unstable as water.
Very good, excellent. David, you're absolutely right. Does anyone remember which tribe? It's Reuven. And Reuven is the tribe of this month of Tammuz. Very nice connection. Very good. I hadn't thought of that. Beautiful.
That part I didn't know.
It's great. Any other? Yeah.
Life.
Life. Water is life. Right. Yeah.
Well, it begins with the letter Mem,
Mm-hmm.
which in Gematria is 40,
Mm-hmm.
and the number 40 represents renewal, 40 days on the mountain, 40. It just it occurs many times in our tradition.
Right. 40 days is the time of a process. It's something. The Talmud even says that the fetus doesn't even get its quickening until 40 days in. Right. So yeah.
Destruction.
Water can also be destructive. Right. Anything in immoderation can also be destructive. Fire and water, both necessary for life, both need to be tempered by the other. We also think of water as, or we think of flow, right? When we describe things as being in the flow, it means that they're progressing appropriately. If we say that if anyone's experienced a flow state, there's that wonderful experience of being almost outside of time when you're completely absorbed and engaged in something. We use this language of flow to, which comes obviously from liquid, and our most primary liquid is water, to mean we're actually receiving some kind of spiritual transmission even, right? So, yeah, we know that we understand water is teaching us something beyond its physical and practical properties. In the Kabbalah, fire is associated with the side of Gevurah, which is the side of more contraction, more aggression, more danger, and you can understand this, right? When we get overheated, we get impatient. We can be we're insufficient. There's insufficient lubrication. We get friction, and from that sparks fly, and we can get into angry and confrontational situations. Whereas water is representative of the side of chesed, which is pure generosity. It's grace, and of course, as we were saying, what they really need is to be in communion and in balance, tempered with each other. This is where we find the radiance of the center, which is Tiferet. But the tradition also compares water to Torah. In fact, Thomas says, "Ein mayin ela Torah." Water always implies Torah, because it's that life-giving, nourishing essence which sustains us. You may be familiar with this, with the Midrash, which we alluded to before, about the well of Miriam. Talmud actually says that by the merit of Miriam, the people had water. By the merit of her brother Aaron, there was the pillar of cloud that guided the Israelites through the wilderness. And by the merit of Moses, there was manna. Now they understand this, the rabbis, as also not just what was true in that time, but allegories that are lasting throughout the generations. So the pillar of smoke that rose above the tabernacle, this is the power of our prayer to connect us between heaven and earth, the priestly mode. The manna from heaven, they understand as being also the written Torah, which Moses brought down from the high places with him. And the water of Miriam, which comes up from underneath the earth, the well of Miriam, is the water of the living Torah, the oral Torah. Because it's very important to our tradition that we say that Torah is not just what's written in the book. Torah is the entire ongoing conversation and discussion that we have through the ages about it. So, water, just as water is what makes food digestible, the oral Torah is what makes the written Torah digestible to us. It's, as it were, the white space. It's the melody. It's the unwritten stories, including the unwritten stories of Miriam and Serach and various other of our ancestors who are named, but whose stories are not exactly explicit in the text. There's a wonderful little story from the Talmud I want to share in conclusion with this idea of oral Torah. You're probably familiar with the story of the guy that comes to Shammai and says, "Can you teach me the whole Torah while I stand on one foot?" And Shammai says, "Get out of here!" And then he goes to Hillel, and Hillel says, "Yes, I can teach you the whole Torah on 1 foot. Namely, that which is hateful to you, don't do to anyone else. Go and learn." Right? Great story. In that same section, there's another story about a guy that goes to Shammai and says, "Will you convert me on condition that I only want to learn the written Torah, that I only believe in the written Torah, I don't believe in the oral Torah?" And Shammai's like, "Get out of here," which is generally Shammai's response. So he goes to Hillel and he says, will you convert me on condition that I'm only going to learn the written Torah, I only believe in that, I don't believe in the oral Torah? And Hillel's like, "Yeah, sure, no problem. Okay." So the guy kind of converts him, says, "Come back tomorrow, we'll start learning." So he comes back and he teaches him, this is Aleph, this is Bet, this is Gimel, this is Dalet, like this is A, B, C, D. Right? Come back tomorrow, we'll continue. The next day the guy comes back and Hillel says, "Actually, Aleph is tough, Bet is Shin, Gimel is Rik." So A is Z, B is X, C is Y. It's not a mathematical problem. It's, what's the punchline here? The guy goes, "What are you talking about? Yesterday you told me A is A, B is B, C is C. Now you're telling me A is Z, B is X, C is Y." Hillel says, "And how do you know what the letters mean, what the letters are, unless someone tells you what the letters are?" Meaning, there's no such thing as only a written Torah. You can't read a document unless you have an oral tradition telling you, which explains to you what the letters are and how to read the language. It's pretty deep, right? Pretty amazing story. So, yeah, something to think about. So as we're entering this period of the year where the fire is on the ascendant, the sun is high in the sky, and the waters are beginning to dissipate, let's commit ourselves to keeping our roots tapped into that juicy, life-giving, abundant flow of this water of life, this water of our tradition, which isn't just reading the words, but talking about them, and dwelling on them, and discussing them, and sharing their meaning with one another, and letting their inspiration enliven us and ensoul us, and keep us juicy like the fruit which still has the water within, even as the sunshine is helping it ripen. And may we pray that this water continue in right proportion to sustain us and to hold the dangers of the fire at bay, that this should be a summer of life and of blessing and of sustenance and nurture for us, for all of the people of Colorado, for all of the people of this continent and all of the people of this world. Let's say.
Amen.
And Dan's gonna lead us in Musaf.